Hello, everyone. I'd like to officially welcome you to Nonlinear Project Management for the Rest of Us. My name is Shelley Hayduck, and I'm co-hosting today's session with Matt Caton, our Director of Customer Solutions.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today.
All right, and again, for those of you who have just joined, I do want to point out that we'll have an active Q&A throughout the session, and we'll reserve a good 15 to possibly 20 minutes on the Q&A, so feel free to type in or chat in any comments or questions. Today's session is all about achieving easy productivity and success with the brain. The brain is a no-limits knowledge base that enables you to visualize all your information. So the great thing about it is you can put an enormous amount of information. You can store multiple projects. You can go really deep on a single project. And unlike, excuse me, standard project tools, there is no set order to the way you put things in the brain. So let me just go ahead and get started. And Matt, I just want to verify that you can see my screen okay?
Yes, I can. Everything looks great, Shelley.
Okay, good. So in this particular example, we're going to talk about how you can use the brain to manage multiple projects. So the brain is great for personal projects. So you might have for instance, a kitchen renovation or home renovation project. And what you can do is store everything from your your Excel spreadsheets, URLs, to even images on your particular project. And at the first level, the brain is an aggregator, meaning you don't have to start going through your bookmarks, going through multiple file drives. You can bring it all together in the brain. You also have the ability to take notes on any thoughts. So I've just brought up my tools area here as well. And you can see that I actually have on my kitchen renovation product a note. And the notes area is particularly handy for jotting down those free-flowing ideas, bulleting lists, checklists, and contact information as well. So I actually have the phone number of the supplier that I'm going to be using for my kitchen, as well as my contractor right here. So that's actually kind of cool, because all I have to do is mouse over that particular thought and I can see that note. So that's just to give you an idea of how you can use the brain on really any kind of project. A lot of people use it for travel planning. So there's another example here in this brain. And by the way, this is a very simple, generic project management example. For those of you that would like a copy of this brain, we're more than happy to send it to you. Where here we've again got links to different websites, trip itineraries, equipment checklists, as well as just different locations and dive sites. So all this is coming together in the brain, in this case, to make someone's time more effective on their diving trip. So, if you're spending a lot of money on a travel vacation, a project, like your kitchen renovation or diving, if you bring it all together in the brain, what you can do is really visualize all your resources and aspects of that project. And of course, we can do business projects as well. So, for instance, you could manage a website launch, and some of those other projects, the information was sort of put in there in more of an ad hoc way. The other thing you can do is enumerate certain thoughts, and if you want to have the thoughts in your brain represent different phases of the project, you can do that as well. So in this particular example, the website launch has basically 4 phases. You've got the research phase, the site development phase, the testing phase, and then going live. So in this case, each thought below my active thought, which is called a child, represents a phase of the project. And the other thing that's interesting is I can move things under different phases. So website design and themes, if that belongs under research phase 1, I can change that. And if maybe the website design and objectives are now finalized and that fits more under site development, I can go ahead and just go ahead and start typing in the first couple letters of that thought and find it in my existing thought list, website design objectives, and make a connection there. And now it's linked under 2 places. So one of the advantages of the brain is I can have that one piece of information effectively categorized under multiple subject matter in the brain. So it gives you a little bit more of a multidimensional way to categorize and access and link information together. Now, the other thing people like to do is to also visualize project methodologies. Now, we have a lot of creatives that, just kind of put everything in the brain and they do it their own way. And actually, it's fabulous for people like that can't stand Microsoft Project or whatever. And then we have another type of user who is very methodical, who has a process that they want to follow and adhere to in the brain. And the brain's good for actually both types of users. So if you're on one end of the spectrum where you're highly creative and maybe not as organized as you like to be, the brain is great for that. If you're also on the other end of the spectrum where you're hyper organized and want to see everything, the brain will work well for you. So just lots of different ways, lots of examples that you're going to be seeing today. So in terms of that, we have different project management models, and you can use the thoughts, the parent-child relationship, to visualize these project methodologies. One that comes to mind is David Allen's GTD, Getting Things Done, natural planning model, where he actually has 5 phases to project management. And that one is purpose, mission, brainstorming, organizing, and next action item. So again, for each phase or milestone in that project, we actually have a thought. And then, of course, under those thoughts, that's where you can start to build. So your purpose might be to become number 1 in yoga apparel. So that's our purpose. And then our mission might be to service all active people worldwide. So here, and then you might want to start brainstorming, how do we do this? Are we going to develop new sportswear? And we do have a JT Apparel Company example that I think Matt will show us later on. So this is a little bit of a segue or hint into what he's doing. The other thing we could do is expand our customer base. Or we could also increase advertising. So now I'm sort of going in more of a brainstorming session where I'm getting some ideas out, and so you can see how I can sort of continue to build this. And of course, once I start to build something like this, I can do relevant attachments. So increasing advertising, I'm going to have to do a budget for this. So now I'm sort of moving from brainstorming to actual activities by clicking on this thought, and I'm actually going to add a spreadsheet and start working on my budget right here in the brain. So let me just go ahead and do that. And you notice it's going to name the file, the name of the thought, and I can just go ahead and save, and that's going to save right back into the thought folder. I haven't done anything here, but let's assume I've worked on a wonderful budget. I can also save as and do multiple versions, and it's actually going to save right into the thought folder. Let me just show you where that is. So you can see here I've got in my thought tab that particular document on increasing my advertising. And so that's the way things can come together in terms of visualizing project methodologies. The other thing that you can do is you can actually set up, in addition to a visual categorization structure, project types and tags. And we'll show you some examples of that, but just to give you an idea, you might have just 10 or 15 different projects all running simultaneously. Most of us are multitaskers, and you can actually set up a thought type. So you notice each one of these thoughts below project type has a different color and icon attached to it. And what that does is it enables you to sort of visually prioritize or represent this project status. So I've got a thought type here for completed project. So anything that's done can fall under completed. Green lighted, something that's just started. Hot projects, something that, we're just, it's in the process of getting going. There's a lot of stuff to be done. It's going to require my attention. Therefore, it's a hot project. Pending project means something that I'm working on may not be as important. And then stalled project, for whatever reason, you may not get budget approval. You're waiting to hear back to hire people. The project is stalled. So you can use these types of thought types to convey status. And just to show you what that looks like, let me go back to my projects area and go into writing, and you can see I've got 4 different writing projects, but because I'm using these thought types, I can see that my company brochure, it's a pending project. We've got a little bit of legal that needs to happen there, get some copyright information before that can continue. The company newsletter is moving forward, so I can start working on that. The company press release, this is completed. A completed project area is also very nice. We do a lot of work with government and military organizations, and a lot of their brains actually have a lessons learned or completed area. And so sometimes the best resource is past projects. And one of the great things about the brain is there is no limit to the number of thoughts, the number of pieces of information you can put in the brain. So once you've finished a project, the brain can then serve as your place to archive that project. And you may not even want to have completed projects in this area. You might want to have a separate thought called completed projects 2015 maybe. So everything that's gotten completed this year, and this is where I can come in and add that project type. So I'm going to go ahead and get the project type for completed project, hit OK, and now I've got a completed project area. And what I might want to do is take this company press release and move this under completed projects. I'm just making a link or a connection to that. Or maybe there is the company newsletter. That's done. So I'm going to unlink it from writing projects, and I'm going to change the status of this now to completed project here. And now as you can see, so that's changed. And so that's the other thing I can do. Likewise, maybe my home renovation project, my kitchen renovation project, this is now a completed 2015 project. So I might still want to keep that under personal. So in this case, I'll keep both connections, but now I can see these projects are actually done. And my website launch, I'll move that under here. So there's also ways to continue to, once a project is done, you can have a archiving area. You can even put that as a jump or wherever you want to have that. So you've got your active projects here, your archive projects here, and your project methodologies. Maybe that goes below. So things can change, and you can set things up in a way that makes most sense for your business, for your workflows. The other thing that I want to talk about is connecting people to projects. That's also very important, and you can do that quite nicely in the brain. So, for instance, Sarah is helping me out with this marketing event here where I've got all kinds of things going on, from my ad copy to my advertising campaigns. So I've got Sarah connected, and she's one member of my team. Now you'll notice here I also have some people types. These are just different types of people that I've created thought types for so that I can add them in my brain. So for instance, if I want to go ahead and add Matt Caton into my brain, and Matt is actually a director, I can go ahead and select type and come over here and make Matt a director and hit OK. And so now I've got Matt as a director in my brain, and then I probably want to link Matt to my website launch project because he's got a lot of web development skills. So now I've got Matt connected. And some of these, the way things are linked, it's somewhat subjective, whatever works for you. I like to have people connected as jumps. However, if you find, for instance, Matt might be more of a project manager, and we want to move Matt above to kind of show that he's sort of shepherding this project, now we've made him a parent. If he's sort of just one of many people involved in the website launch, maybe I'll just put him below as a child. I'll put him and Sarah. They're both kind of in this, so then I can put them below. Or, if you just kind of like to have an area, what I like to do in my brain is I sort of have the area below the child area for all the phases and the information, the research goes below the project, and the people that are associated with, just to separate them out a little better visually, I keep them as a jump. And a jump thought, for those of you that are unfamiliar, as the name suggests, it's related to your active thought, but it's not necessarily a subcategory, meaning it's not necessarily a parent thought, or it's not necessarily a child thought. But again, so you can kind of look at things and see what makes sense for you. And again, this is just my project's thought. If any of you would like a copy of this brain, I'm more than happy to send this to you. Now what I'd like to do is I'm going to start a new brain just so you can see how easy it is to go ahead and just start a brand new project from scratch. So I'm going to call this New Brain. This is my 2015 Human Resources Employee Destination Portal. Okay. So it's a IT project that we have going on where we're going to create a human resources portal to gather information and help train people more effectively. There's lots of things we need to do here. These things can be somewhat ethereal and intangible, people having a hard time understanding our vision and goals. So a brain is really going to help us keep everything on track. And in this particular brain, I'm actually going to create different phases or steps for this project by enumerating thoughts. I want to show you how that works. So I'm just going to drag from the little circle we call the gate. And the first phase of this project is research. So I've got my research. Now I'm going to use the semicolon to indicate that I'm creating another separate thought. Second phase of this project is development. And oopsie, actually what I want to do is I want to put a number 2 because I do it. So what I'm doing, if I do want my child thoughts to appear in a specific sequence, I can either thought type them or I can enumerate them. So in this case, I actually want to use the numbers here to kind of let people know which phase happens. So number 3 is testing, and then finally we've got number 4, which is implementation. So I've sort of just carved out now a space, a knowledge base that is more intelligent than just dumping a bunch of stuff in a folder or a Dropbox or whatever, because what I can see here are clearly my phases that I need to accomplish in getting this human resources portal up and running. And of course, if I want to, I can add icons for each thought. So research can have a little book here, development. Let me just go ahead and maybe that one I'll go into symbols. The Brain 8 comes with over 1,500 icons, so you can definitely go ahead and choose whatever icon makes the most sense for you. So here's a thought for, and then testing. We'll go ahead and add an icon there. Use a ladybug since we're going to be identifying bugs. And then implementation. Implementation is actually all about the people. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab a people icon. So you can see here how things are starting to look a little bit more pleasant. It's kind of a nice way to get in and start looking at your information. I personally certainly prefer this to MS Project, but that being said, you can drag and drop your project files in here as well. Now, of course, again, the brain isn't just for visualizing. It's actually for getting stuff done. So I'm going to start my research on my project right here in my brain. So the first thing I want to do is think about my user experience. And I'm sort of brainstorming like, gosh, what are all the key elements of making this human resources portal effective? One of them is user research. The other thing is information architecture, which I can actually map out in my brain, by the way. We actually have that's kind of a separate topic, but a lot of web developers and people who are structured even just other websites, they will actually map out the sitemap in the brain to visualize it. So I'm going to put information architecture here. And then finally, we can't really have a portal site without some sort of community program, because it is really all about bringing things together. So these are sort of the areas that I want to research and make sure we're really jiving on in this particular brain. So now what I'd like to do, since I'm in my research phase, is I just want to do some web research. So I'm going to click on creating community, and actually let me add creating online community, because this isn't a community for a city or any kind of thing like that. This is about creating an online community within my organization. So now I'm going to actually go up to options and use the brain search web to go and search for information on that out in the web. And of course, there's going to be a lot of great information. Here's a nice article on 12 keys to building an online community. I do like this, so I'm going to start to aggregate information and research that's relevant to my project. Now, any URL can be dragged and dropped onto a thought or below a thought to create a separate thought. And the cool thing that's great about this, you can do this for contacts in Salesforce.com. You can drag URLs from SharePoint. You can drag URLs from intranet sites. I'm actually just using a web page, but literally anything that has that URL or relative path, drag and drop it into your brain, and then you'll be able to access it and categorize it effectively. Okay, so I've just dragged and dropped that article in, and I'm going to go and get a few more. So 6 common mistakes. I certainly don't want to make any mistakes here on this site. So I'm going to go ahead and drag that article in. And you can see now what I'm doing is I'm just building my knowledge base in a way that makes sense. And we'll just give this web page a second to load. Maybe I'll go on to another one. And here's another article from the Australian Psychological Society on how to activate online communities. So I like that, and I'm going to also drag that in my brain. Now, one of the nice things about the brain as well is I can take notes on my research also. So in this particular example, and by the way, sometimes you'll notice the website tag and name gets different. So I've got the label here is how to create active communities, and this is saying Australia Psychological Society. If I want to change the order of those things, I just click this little arrow, and now I've got the title of that web page right there, how to activate online communities. Now, the other thing that's really interesting is there was some really nice stats in here about 17% of people believe in corporate or product advertising, and 78% trust their. So I like these statistics. I'm going to go ahead and copy them, and I'm actually going to go ahead and paste them right here in my notes area. So I have some notes on this, and I'm also going to go ahead and make some notes on we need to review our design very carefully and do a peer review. So, just any notes any ideas that these particular information resources might have triggered, I'm creating a note. And I can also timestamp that note, which is fabulous as well. So this is something I'm thinking about right now on September 24th. So I'm also basically documenting when these ideas are happening. Now, of course, one of the things that's great about the brain, now this article was a little bit more about design. This falls under online community, but it also falls under my my development phase. So I want to pay attention to this in development, actually, because I'm going to create a section called design. So now let's go ahead and let's put this under here. So now I've got an area on design where I'm going to be thinking about my design, but I also have this article that relates to online community. So again, being able to cross-reference and have different articles in different areas. Now I also want to create an area in this brain for my team here. So I'm going to create a thought for my team, and of course I'm going to go ahead and add a nice icon here for people. And I'm going to start to actually list all my team members and connect them to what they're going to be doing on this project. So I'm going to go ahead and put Patrick, Tracy, Matt, and Travis in this brain. And you can see here, these are all just some key people that I'm going to be working with on the project. Now, I can also set up thought types or tags. So for instance, Matt is actually a senior developer. So if I want to go in and give that a thought type, make a thought type for developer, I can right click on Matt and select to create a new thought type. And I'm going to call this developer. Okay, or I might want to call this engineer, and maybe I'll even do senior engineer, so I might want to note who all my senior engineers are, and I'll hit OK. And what I can do now with this thought type is I can actually, now you can see it's kind of got a little extra little line around it that represents the thought type. You can see the brain makes it very clear that it says right in the thought tab, this is a thought type. So now what I can do is actually set a color. Maybe I want all my senior engineers in sort of a green, probably a little bit of a darker green color, and I'm going to give them an icon as well. Let all the senior engineers, and let me go into my technology section. All senior engineers, I'm going to give an icon that looks like that. So now I can distinguish Matt as a senior engineer. I'm also going to right-click and select Travis as a senior engineer. And then I might want another thought type for managers. Tracy's actually a project manager. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new thought type, and I'm going to call Tracy a manager. And again, for managers, I can actually choose an icon. So maybe I'll go to the people section. And for manager, I'll actually use the hand symbol. That'll be interesting. And I'm going to give managers a color. Maybe all managers will appear in sort of a deeper red color. So now you can see I've got maybe Tracy and Patrick. I'm going to thought type them as managers. So now I've got my people sort of categorized based on their responsibility, and I can start assigning them. So Matt being senior engineer, I'm going to go back over, oopsie, let's just go back to my different areas of the project, and Matt is actually going to be in charge of our design. So I'm going to make a connection from design to Matt, and just start typing in the first couple letters, and now Matt is linked to design. As far as testing, I want Patrick to head our testing area. We'll have all kinds of things going on, so I'm going to connect Patrick to testing. So now I've made a connection there. And maybe I also want a senior developer, so I'm going to add Travis to the testing area and Matt, because we really want to make sure we're not making any mistakes. So this is also where it gets interesting, where I can see, do I have too many people in one area of a project? Do I need to add someone else? Which areas don't have anything? So for instance, implementation, I want to add that creating community stuff, because that is also relevant. And that's something that I'm going to get Tracy involved in. She has a lot of experience in managing communities. So let's go ahead and attach Tracy. So now you can see each person, if I click on them, they have different areas of expertise, so I can see, what they're doing and what they're leveraging. And in terms of just these thought types, the Brain Aid actually offers built-in thought types and tags. So I'm actually going to go up to File and select Import and select Template Brain. And, actually these are great example brains. You can go ahead and import or create a new brain and look at them all. But what I want this time, and a lot of users don't know about, is at the bottom of this list, there's something called Business Types and Tags Only. And I love these ones because they give me all my people types and my project types, and that's going to be relevant for this brain. So I'm going to select to go ahead and import, and I'm only importing the types and tags. I don't need thoughts. I'm going to create my own thoughts. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And now what it's doing is it's actually going in and importing all 104 of those tags and types. And that's going to save me a lot of time, because I can actually leverage some of the best practices and categories that exist in most brains. So here's my tags area. And we'll talk a little bit about tags. We haven't really covered what tags are. And here are my types. So these are all the types. So I've got all kinds of expert, manager, all kinds of people types here. And then those project types that I had in my other brain, those are actually included. And that's kind of interesting. So for instance, now that I've got these types implemented, if my research is done, time to move on to the next phase, I can actually go ahead and go to my projects area, and I'm going to type this completed. This part of the project is completed. Now we're in our development phase, so I'm going to actually give that a project type. And I'm going to make this a hot project. So this is something, so now you can see it's got the color. The reason I'm not seeing the project type icons is because I've already put my own custom icons. If I were to create a new project area, like maybe under implementation, let me add a thought for European rollout. So we're going to be rolling out the site to Europe first, right? So, okay, European rollouts. So I'll add this into the brain. Now, if I wanted a thought type, maybe for whatever reason, this is stalled because we haven't installed our servers in Europe yet, I'll go ahead and type that as stalled. So you can see how that fits together nicely. Now, you might be asking, what's the difference between a project type and a tag? Now, what a tag does is a tag, you can have multiple tags for thought. You can almost think of it as additional metadata for that thought. So I want to tag the European rollout as a high cost because it's going to be expensive. We're going to get new servers. And in terms of what we want to do, it is something that we're going to do in Q4, actually, the final quarter of this year. And, I can continue to do that if there are other things that are going to be costly, like, for instance, creating online community. I'll put this as a high cost as well. Now what I can do is start to flag things in my brain that might make sense. So for instance, if my budget gets shrunk or it grows, I can simply click on this tag that says high cost, and I can see all the things in this brain, even if they're not necessarily connected, that have that tag, so that I know, what is going to impact my budget. And that's really nice. And now finally, the one other thing that I do want to show you, and let's go over to our development area, is how to integrate existing information. So we actually have in my projects, I have a whole engineering area here, and there's an engineering doc that we wrote on this particular development project. So I'm simply going to drag and drop that into my brain. Now what that does is that creates a shortcut to where that file exists outside of the brain. I can do a couple of things. I can right click to copy or move this file, or I can leave it as a shortcut. It depends what I want to do. In this case, I actually want to move the file into my brain because I'm going to be synchronizing that on the cloud. So I'll go ahead and do that. I also, in my team area, we're going to be hiring more people, and I have a fabulous employee checklist that I want to add in my team section. So let me just go ahead and do that. And you'll notice if I were to keep this as a shortcut, in the Thought tab here, you can see the path of where this is located. In this case, I'm actually going to copy the file. So you can see that that is in my brain. So lots of great things. The other thing that I can do is I can actually drag and drop folders. So I've got some cool stuff on IT management that I might want to put into my brain. If I simply drag and drop this folder, this is actually going to go ahead and make a shortcut to the folder. Now this is fabulous. A lot of you have these gargantuan file folder directories. We're always like, where is that folder that we had on this project? Go ahead, and you can even put, the thing that's great about this, if this IT management folder is like highly used, put it right at the top of your brain. You can even create a pin so it's always there. So if people need access to that folder, boom, they can just click on that and the information becomes just so accessible. It's absolutely just fabulous. And The other thing that you can do, so we've got some website content, is I can create virtual thoughts or import a folder too. So this website content area, this is all content that we're going to be using to develop the site. And I actually want to go ahead and import this file right into my brain. So the way I do that is I actually go to File, I'm going to select Import, and I'm going to select Folder here. And I'm going to go to my desktop and go ahead, and that's under My Projects, under Engineering, and select this My Website, Website Content folder, hit Save, and now what it's doing is it's actually importing all 7 directories and 2 files right there. And so you can see what this looks like. Now I've got each basically folder that was in this website content becomes a thought. And then any documents that were in those folders are attached as a thought. Now, there's actually not too much in this folder, but you can see how it's actually parsed those folders and added stuff in there very nicely. And this is great, too, because now I can start working with this. I can start adding maybe, Tracy needs to look at this for review. And maybe this is something that is going to affect our European rollout. So I want to put this under our European rollout area as well. So again, now just giving all that stuff that was kind of in a folder added context in my brain. So that's the way it works to create a new brain. The final step in this is actually taking this brain and sharing it with people or synchronizing it to the cloud. So I'm going to go ahead and do this, and that way I'll have an online backup of my brain, and I can access this from any computer or online. So I'm going to do that. And Matt's going to cover a little bit more about syncing in his session. So what I'm going to do before that is I'm going to go to another brain. Let me go to the, let's see here, the My Brain, and show you a brain that's a little bit larger with multiple projects. Just so you can get a sense of how to organize a brain that has, a couple 100 projects in the brain. So this particular brain has a business and personal section. So again, you can see there's all kinds of vacations and activities that have been organized in the brain as far as where to go and who to go with. And then in my business area here, I actually have a thought for active projects. So these are all the projects that are active right now. And you'll notice here a mix of thought types, critical project, and tags as well. So in this case, my 2015 new web sales project is high investment and it's next month. So those are just different tags that I've set up. And of course, I can add more tags. Tags are fabulous because that enables me to integrate things. If I want to know everything that's happening within a 6-month time frame, that's a tag that I set up for myself. I can click on that tag and get access to all my different projects. So I can see, and from there maybe I want to talk about the lease renewal, and that's under operations. So you can have the logical categorization of a project and the more functional categorization with thought types. And then again, you'll notice the connection of people. So in this brain, we've got a whole mapping of people, which is very important because, again, most of the time when we're working with projects, we're not necessarily working alone. We're working with a wide variety of people. So here we've got some thought types for executive. Then after executive, you've got just different levels of people. So here under Terry Mason, we've got directors and fellows and managers as well. And then if I click on any of these directors, I can see who reports to them, which is all these different managers, and of course what they're working on. So I can see that Bill Walker has different people that he's managing and that he's working on our Red Cross clients. So that's another way to do it, and that's in our nonprofit clients area in the brain. So just different ways to organize and slice. The other thing that's really, I think, helpful for people that are doing a lot of collaborative project management is to have a section on meeting management. I actually have thoughts in my brain for meetings because, in larger companies, even small companies, you tend to have a lot of meetings. I will say this, though, if you use the brain and start to synchronize your data and create a more intelligent context, we've actually proven that you can reduce meeting time by using a team brain, because you can kind of see if everyone keeps that brain up to date, you'll know what you're doing, and it'll be much easier. You'll save time and not have to meet as often. But when you do have to meet, you can also put that meeting in your brain, of course. So this particular example, I was preparing for a board meeting, and these were all the topics that came up. There was sales projection, expanding product line, expanding to another country. And what you'll see here is for each one of these items that came up in the meeting, I had a thought type. Certain things that fall under my lap, I have a thought type. So anything that's purple with that arrow, I know that's my action item, and that's just relevant for me. So, lots of things get talked about, but I, of course, don't want to drop the ball. So that's my action item. And, of course, if this no longer becomes my action item, I can actually just untype it. So I want to show you how to do that, too, because you don't have to keep these thought types. Same thing, maybe we're not expanding to China anymore, so I'm going to untype that. So that's no longer an action item. And that's the nice thing about the brain. As easy as stuff gets categorized, you can uncategorize things as well. So for instance, if I go back to my active projects area, maybe the quality customer service audit, that's no longer active, and that's fine too. I can just unlink it from my active project area and just keep it under where when it was an idea for market expansion. And you can see this area here has changed. Likewise, the 2015 website project, we finished it. It's no longer a critical project, so I'm actually just going to untype it, and I'm going to unlink it from active projects and just keep it under sales for reference. So there's ways to change things, and of course I can add new projects by creating new thoughts, but this helps you sort of, as the project status changes, you can add a thought type, you can get rid of a thought type, you can link and unlink things, really just to, again, make sure that your brain reflects all of those different projects and workflows that you have going simultaneously. And I think with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass presenter over to you, Matt.
Great. I'm going to open my brain now, and this particular brain that I'm opening, let me show my screen. This particular brain is a brain that Shelley and I actually collaborate on, and we'll be talking about that a little bit later in the demonstration. But this is a fantastic brain that outlines projects that we are working on for a sporting apparel company. But the reference can be used for anyone running any type of team-building collaborative project. And there are a few features, specific features in the brain that I would like to highlight that really enhance the collaborative aspect of using this particular brain. And this can be true whether I'm just managing alone with my brain over a team of people and have a checklist of things to complete and tasks to complete on time, or if I'm actually sharing the brain, as I am with this one, through a product that we call Team Brain. And we'll talk about Team Brain a little bit later in the demo. But the first thing that I want to share with you is something that we call thought types. And thought types is just a classification of the category that that particular thought falls into. So you notice if I go to Sports Zone, I have a thought type called Kids Display, and Kids Display is a project. So I may have different projects for different companies that I'm working with, different organizations. And of course, I don't want one thought with all my projects. Then I'll be looking at kids displays or running shoes or triathlon shirts and things like that, but not know what company that's associated with. So I want kids display to fall directly under Sports Zone, but I want it categorized as a project. And the advantage to doing that and creating that thought type is that in the future, I can actually go down and run a report and look for all of my thought types that are projects. And there they are. You can see I've got currently 3 different projects. So I'm going to create a new project now. And let's even call it something different. I won't call it a project. I'll call this, project 2.0. I want to create a new thought type for you. So for Fitness Universe, we are setting up a triathlon display. So I'm going to just simply type in triathlon display. Now, if I just left it as it is, triathlon display, you can see that it's now blending in with my key executives for Fitness Universe, my contracts, my marketing, store locations, and other events and information about Fitness Universe. But I really want it to stand out. I want that custom icon and color code, and when I mouse over triathlon display, I want it to tell me that this is a key project. So I'm actually going to activate this thought, right-click, and this is where I can assign a thought type. I like to right-click on a thought if it already exists to assign the thought type. And I can select an existing project, but let's say we're going to create a new category called Key Projects. These are the 4 or 5 projects that I'm currently focused on. So I'm going to create a new thought type. So I select New Thought Type and type in Key Projects. And it takes me to the sort of hidden key project thought where I can give it some attributes. So I want my key projects, for example, to be displayed in sort of a light purple color, and I want an image to appear with them. I'm a very visual person. I know Shelley is as well. We like seeing those icons as just sort of that visual identification for what that thought is. You notice that in all of Shelley's brains, she had a lot of great thought type icons identifying the thought. So I click on the little plus sign here next to my key projects, and all of my key projects will have a certain image. You know what, right off the bat, I see these push pins, and I think that's going to work out perfectly. So I can filter the category. I've got a lot of different categories to choose from, but I like this push pin. I'm going to select it. And now all of the key projects that I create time and time again will display in this purple color. So I have the purple push pin icon. When I mouse over, I'll see that's a key project. And most importantly, I can run that report down on my Reports tab. So marketing director walks into my office and says, all right, Matt, what are the 5 things that you're focused on right now? I'm going to pull up my key projects, regardless of where they are in the brain. I could have a brain with hundreds or thousands of thoughts, but I'll be able to find those key projects very, very quickly. So now let's go ahead and start attaching some content and information to it. And again, keeping with project management, one of the first things that I always approach are, what's my checklist? What needs to get done to make this particular project a success? And the brain down in the notes field, Shelley showed you how she kept track of the notes. One of the features, actually 2 of the features that I like, are checkboxes and timestamps. So the very first thing I'm going to do is create a real quick checklist. So to get this project off the ground, I need corporate approval. I also need to verify that we have the budget. And I need to create some mock-up displays. I thought that was MOC. Thank goodness we have spell check. So mock-up displays. So that'll get me started. And of course, as I continue to evolve with this particular project, I can enhance, check things off my list. Let's say I get a call today from our finance person, and they say, you know, it was Susan. Susan is saying, yes, we've got the budget to get started with this. I'm going to check that off the list. And more importantly, I'm going to just add a few spaces and timestamp this. So a year from now, 2 years from now, when I go back and say, hey, we did this display for Fitness Universe, it worked out great. How long did it take for corporate sign-off? How long did it take to get the mock-ups ready and so forth? What was sort of the project outline that we had for that project? And that's going to help us gain more knowledge on future projects. So here I can look back and say, wow, project started, and I'll even create a, let's get that checklist there, a little lower, and I'll say project kickoff. and just simply timestamp that as well. So I know exactly when we kicked that off and when key events took place. I'm going to leave those all in the notes section. So a couple of really small little features within the Brain, but they've got a really great impact, particularly for project management. They're invaluable to me whenever I'm following through on a project that I'm working on. And another key feature are the reminders within the Brain. And setting a thought reminder, let's say we've got an area for our presentations. And actually, you can see I've got quite a few thoughts called presentations, so I'm going to show you another trick as well. This is for context-sensitive naming. In short, we simply call this the comma trick. So I noticed as I was typing in the word presentations, I've got dozens of other thoughts called presentations in this particular Brain. And if you think about every project that I'm doing, every time I go in front of a client, I'm usually bringing some type of presentation with me. Sometimes it's my Brain. Sometimes it's a board with pictures and displays and graphics and so forth. But a lot of what I do involves presentations. The comma trick allows me to give this new thought that I'm creating a very unique name. So rather than just being called presentations, and you'll see it'll be displayed as presentations, but because I put a comma in front of presentations, when I click on the thought, you can see the full thought name is Triathlon Display Presentations. So again, as I'm doing my search for presentations, I'll know the right presentation to go to. Or if I'm displaying a list of thoughts running a report down in the report section, again, I'll know the correct thought that I'm visiting. So that comma trick can work as you're creating thoughts, or you can type it in afterwards. So let's say I type in meeting notes, and then I want that context-sensitive naming, because again, I'm keeping track of meeting notes for all my different projects. I can't just add the comma. Now I actually just need to type in the thought name. You can add the comma only as you're creating the thought, and the Brain assumes you want to utilize the context-sensitive naming feature. Now I'm going to just simply type in triathlon display, comma, meeting notes, and of course that thought will be truncated when it's displayed below triathlon display. It knows that that's in the correct context, so it only displays meeting notes, but the full thought name is triathlon display meeting notes. So another fantastic feature. And of course, that first presentation is coming up next week. I want to get this off of my mind. I don't want to have to remember, gosh, I've got a meeting on Friday at 5 o'clock. I have to have that presentation ready. Friday, 5 o'clock, don't forget. I want the Brain to remind me, obviously. So I'm going to go into the Brain, and on the Calendar tab, I'm going to click to add an event reminder. So anytime you click that add button in the Brain calendar, it's automatically adding the event for the current active thought. So make sure you have your correct active thought open. You can always go back and reassign it, but it saves you some time if you've got the right active thought open. And then an event for this particular thought is my client's first pitch. So we're pitching the client on this particular day. I'm actually going to make this back in time just so you can see what the reminders look like. So we'll say that was supposed to happen on September 19th. And I've got additional information if I don't have it in the notes about where and when and so forth. There's actually a lot of customizations you can do with this feature. So I can create monthly reminders, weekly, bi-weekly, and so forth. You can see if I click on weekly, there's a lot of additional settings, which days on which week and how long does it last and so forth. So I'm just going to say a one-time event. The Brain will remind me 10 minutes prior to that event. And of course, since this is project management, we can keep track of what percentage along the way this project is done, its priority level, and so on. So I'll go ahead and save that. But because this event happened a week ago, almost a week ago, you can see that I'm 5 days past due. There's what that little pop-up reminder looks like. And now this particular event is 5 days past due. From here, I can snooze or dismiss the event. I'll just go ahead and click on dismiss. So the event actually still shows up in my calendar. So for archiving, I can see that event took place, but it's got a line through it just simply letting me know that it's no longer sending me reminders about that particular event. So the next step is I'm actually going to add in some additional content. Let's say in our presentations, we've got a lot of documents that we're going to be sharing and discussing. And those documents, rather than just dragging and dropping from the desktop and from file and folder directories as Shelley showed us, I want to give you a few other examples. And a lot of people actually chatted in about using I think OneNote and Dropbox and some of those other types of file sharing and cloud file repositories and so forth. And those can fit right into the Brain as well. So my first example, I'm not sure what I've got open. Here's my Google Drive. So this is my local Google Drive. So anything that that goes in here is going to be synced up with my online Google Drive, and I'll have online access to it. So from the local Google Drive, and the same is true for, looks like I've got Dropbox. So I'll use these two examples. The same is true for Dropbox. If you've set up Google Drive, you set up Dropbox, you've got a location that's basically being mirrored on the cloud. And the way this works is the same as your file and folder structure. I can simply click and drag this team building into the Brain, and by default, I've got a shortcut back to that specific location. So you can see it's looking at my C users Matt Caton Google Drive. So launching this attachment will launch this particular file. Or I can go one step further, and I can do the same. Here's my Dropbox. So let's say I've got this getting started PDF. I'll drag and drop that right in as well, because we're going to be discussing drag and drop. Actually, I meant to make that a Child Thought of Triathlon display presentation. So I'm going to click and drag over to the right, and I'm going to just simply reorient how that thought is connected. So you can see now it's a child thought of my presentations. And again, I can just click to launch that PDF, that getting started. Here it opened over on my, my other drive. There's that PDF, and I can close that. But let's actually go ahead and bring these in from the cloud version. So here I am on my online Google Drive. And the great thing about Dropbox and Google Drive, and even for those of you that wrote in about Evernote and OneNote, and yes, I see Shelley is mentioning that I can demo that as well. I'd be happy to open those up.
Matt, yes, it's so funny. You read our mind here on the discussion board. I don't know if you have your extra window. Oh, because I was going to say, I don't know if I should interrupt. I was thinking, I don't know if I should interrupt you, but Robert was just asking about using notes from Evernote, actually.
Sure, absolutely, absolutely. It's just as easy. The process is the same. Again, when they're online, the great thing is that everything has a URL. So here I've got a pricing chart. We're really going to be talking about the pricing chart during this first pitch and hammering out the details. With both Google Drive and OneNote, I can right-click and select this Get Link. There's that URL, that online URL. So I can copy this and right-click over my Brain, and I paste the web link. Now, sometimes when you copy from these different information sources, and Shelley even noticed this, I think, when drag and dropping maybe from a URL, it doesn't always capture the name that you want the file to be. Here, it's thinking that you're connecting to something on Google Drive, so it just names it Meet Google Drive. I don't want that for my name. This is my pricing chart. I can simply rename this pricing chart. So I've got a great link there to my pricing chart. And if I'm demoing from another machine that has this Brain on it, I don't need to worry about the shortcuts that I may have dragged and dropped in, because here I'm pointing to something online. So I can just click, and it's going to launch specifically that pricing chart in my Google Drive. Also, keep in mind, it's launching for me because I'm already logged in, so I have access to all of these files. If I share this Brain with someone else, and I'm linking to documents that I've not shared with them, the safety protocols for Google Drive are going to kick in. They're going to go to a page that they don't have access to. Just because it's linked from my Brain doesn't mean the whole world that has access to my Brain has access to the documents I'm linking to. Those are protected behind Google Drive or OneNote or whatever your other information source is. So I'm just pointing to the URL, but you still have to be logged in for that URL to launch. If you don't want that feature and you want anyone that has this brain to be able to open that document, then again, I can open up that local version and I can copy. Here, I can do this for my getting started document. I'll right click and then either move the file in or copy the file into my brain. So it's internal in my brain, and anyone that has the brain would be able to launch that document. But of course, someone mentioned Evernote. So let me pull up Evernote really quickly. There it is. I could go to the online version or open it here locally. Once again, it's really the same. I'm going to have access to all of my documents. And right here from Evernote, and you can see I haven't logged in here in a little while, but there we go. Right here from Evernote, I can, let's say I've got the Cedar Rapids on-site visit. I'm going to, again, right-click, copy the note link, and right here in my brain, right-click, and paste the web link. So there it is. I don't like the file name. That might change. There it is. It's called Welcome Back. We can simply rename that on site.
And I think it is worth pointing out, Evernote is slightly different than just normal URLs, even different from Google Drive or Dropbox, where
Sure.
there it's literally a drag and drop. Microsoft SharePoint is just a drag and drop, but Evernote, for whatever reason, there are URLs attached to things, but they're not like, I don't know, open URLs, or maybe they are, but somehow you have to copy and paste. Matt, I don't know if you want to elaborate on that, or...
No, that's right. I mean, that's the way that I like to do it, is simply because you are in an application, just to right-click and to copy the link, copy the notes link. It's actually a little bit easier here because it doesn't make you open a window that displays the link where you copy and then paste it in. It's sort of a little shortcut. You just select copy note link. It's on your clipboard, ready to paste right into the brain.
All right,
and then
great.
Finally,
and Matt,
I wanted to,
I was just going to say, I bet you're just talking about Outlook. you sort of have this third eye that sees the Q&A anyway, but I did want to, before we end the session today, if you could cover Outlook. Tatiana and a couple other people were asking about the Outlook calendar and adding information. Ivo was also asking about adding an Outlook task. So if you have Outlook available on your brain,
I certainly do.
There's several people in the Q&A that did bring up Outlook.
Oh, great. Well, I've got Gmail open now, so let me just really quickly show you Gmail. Gmail is great in that when you launch an email, so here's a random email. Let's say I really like the graphics in this email. I want to reference this in my meeting saying, hey, we want to send out an email to all of our customers that kind of has this type of display or layout. The great thing about Gmail is I can simply drag and drop right into the brain from the open Gmail, from the URL or address bar. And again, it'll take me directly to that Gmail. Outlook is really great. Here I've got actually the same email in Outlook. And let me go back here, and I'll drag and drop from Outlook, and you'll notice something that's really neat. And this is a unique creation feature that we have specifically with Outlook, in that it's actually going to copy and paste all of your graphics and the actual text of the. Oh, I'm having trouble getting the two on the screen. There we go. It's actually going to bring all of the graphics down. The notion of the brain as well. So not only do you have a link to Outlook, but you have all of text and information from that email displaying in your. And actually, I need to. I need an update. I'm not going to drop from Outlook today, but do go ahead and give that a shot. Just drag and drop an email right in. I'm running a test. Not allowing me to do that. I should have wiped that out before I started today. But the drag and drop from Outlook is a great, unique feature because you do get that HTML version of the email message. And so with that, Shelley, I wanted to wrap things back to you for any additional questions that we may have.
All right, sounds good, Matt. Your audio's getting a little shaky there, so I think we're getting to Q&A. Oh, now you're better in the nick of time. But just right towards the end, we did actually cover a lot. A lot of people had questions about Outlook and Evernote. There were several people, including Julian and somebody else, who was asking about sample Brain. So I thought it would be good, Matt, if you could show in the Brain 8 our built-in templates, how to get there from new and an existing Brain, and then also our page where you can download some sample Brains. Also, Elena was also asking about sample Brains.
Oh, great. Yes, we both have them online where you can download, but we do have a few key examples built right into the Brain, as Shelley mentioned. If I wanted to bring it into this existing Brain, let's say under triathlon display, we also wanted to talk about the whole new structure of, and let me go into File and select to import a template Brain. I can import a Brain on business, brainstorming, education, IT management, and so on. So these are Brains that actually can exist in your current Brain. This is a collaborative Brain that Shelley and I use quite often. I don't want to merge in another Brain into this particular Brain. So let's just start a new one from scratch. Let's say I'm going to
and you know what? I'm glad you're doing that, because I think a lot of people would be like, well, let me just use a test Brain and import, see what thoughts appear before putting it in my main Brain. So what you're doing is actually a great way for the users on today's call to also approach it, just to make sure you like the thoughts that are in there before you integrate it into your main Brain. Yeah, great way to
preview, absolutely. So I'm going to click on New Brain, and so I'm going to select Education, and I'll simply call this my new teaching Brain. And say OK. And the Brain is now not only opening, just starting and creating a brand new Brain for me, but it's importing all of this pre-built information, thought types, thought tags, graphics, and color-coded thoughts, and so forth. So they're all going to be existing there for me. And I can either use this as a sandbox to get my own ideas about how my Brain is going to be structured when I decide to start building my own Brain, or I can use this as sort of the seed that I'll connect all of my information to. So I want to go in here and start building out my student network. And so I've got all of the different people and organizations that I'm working with. So I want thoughts for all of my friends. And my friend is Ralph. And Ralph is going to be taking a class with me over in, here's my class organization, liberal arts. I'm going to connect to Ralph. So you can see my Brain will now start taking shape and having all my information, or I can alter the actual thought names. We don't necessarily call it liberal arts. Maybe it's called, well, I already have fine arts up there, but let's say this is the history.
General arts or whatever.
Arts in America. So that's what I want the thought to be named. So I can really make this my own. I can even change the icons that have been pre-selected for me. So this Brain will become my own personal education Brain.
Right, and this is probably obvious, but worth pointing out, if there are thoughts or sections in that Brain that you don't need, simply delete them. So that's the other thing, too. Obviously, you can change this Brain, the sample Brains, like you can a regular Brain. So mass deleting, editing, unlinking, getting rid of stuff, that's all easy to do as well. Oh, and Tatiana is actually asking how can you delete a thought? So actually, if you do want to cover a little bit on deleting and editing and maybe mass selecting, that probably would be helpful for the group.
Okay, great. So you may have noticed just now on the winter semester, let's say I'm not taking any courses over the winter, so I right-clicked on the thought and selected to forget. Forgetting a thought is sort of the equivalent of throwing something into the Brain's recycle bin. It's not permanently deleted. It's still there, and it can be refreshed or brought back into the Brain if need be. So I can go into my options, and I can actually view my forgotten thoughts, so show forgotten thoughts. There they are. There's 2 of them. I do decide I need a few winter semester classes, so I'm going to select this thought and remember it. So I bring it live back into my Brain. So that's the forget feature. You can bypass forget by holding down the Shift key, so that's the same on Mac or on PC. I do want to get rid of it. I want to permanently delete winter semester, so I click on Shift, right-click, and now you'll notice I bypass the forgetting feature and I go straight to delete. So a little bit of a time saver. The brain verifies, make sure I didn't accidentally Shift, right-click, delete. That's correct. I do want to delete that thought. Now, sometimes you want to delete an entire section of thoughts. Let's say in this particular brain, under my student network, I'm not really going to be keeping track of students and people. This is just going to be books and education and courses and so forth. I'm going to take all social aspects out of it. So I want to delete my student network and all these thoughts underneath. A couple of different things I can do. I can start control clicking. I'm on a PC today, so I do this with a control click. And every time I control click on a thought, it adds that thought to the selection box. On a Mac, that's simply the command click. Same feature, works with command click. And I can even control click on a gate and another gate and so forth. So I'm adding thoughts into the selection box, and I can do things en masse to these thoughts. And if I see something I don't want to add, I'll control click again or I'll do that one at a time to get those thoughts out of the selection box. So I don't want those in there. I do want my student network, everything down below. If there's dozens and dozens and dozens of generations or thoughts below this, I can even right-click and select crawl and modify selection. This is a more advanced feature. But now it's saying these thoughts and all thoughts. I think 2 generations down, that'll get that Ralph thought in there. Oh, maybe I needed to go a little further. I can manually select him. There we go. So I'll control click on Ralph. So now I've got this grouping of thoughts that I'm no longer interested in keeping in my brain. I can, in this case, I'll just forget these, right-click and forget, or I could have Shift, right-click, and go straight to delete. So with just a few simple clicks, I've cleaned up a branch, so to speak, of thoughts in my brain, a grouping of thoughts that I'm not interested in, and I've cleaned the brain up and made it more refined and more tuned into the way I'm actually going to be using this particular brain.
All right, great. And another question from Andrea. Can you generate printed reports for any given project? We do have a number of reports. We don't usually print them out. We've got, actually, Matt, if you want to show the timeline view to show that chronologically and then go into reports, we could give users some ideas of what reporting we do have, and there is quite a bit, actually.
This is a pretty young brain, obviously. Let me jump back over into my JC Apparel and click on Timeline View here. So Timeline View is the little clock that you see right next to your search window, and that tells you which thoughts have been modified really quickly at a glance and when. So you can see a lot of thoughts updated in July of this year, and June and so forth. I'm scrolling down really quickly, but you can see just jump way back in time.
And it's interesting, it is going pretty far back, so we will continue to track. So you can go back, if you have a brain that expands over the course of the year or years, it will show you chronologically this timeline view of when these things were created or modified.
Yeah, so it's a great way to say, all right, last week, what was I really focused on? And I can scroll back and see all the thoughts that were being modified, while I was in the office over the weekend or what have you. But I can also run a report and say, all right, show me, instead of all thoughts, if I just refresh, this is a listing of all thoughts in your brain. So this brain has 273 thoughts. But now I want to see all thoughts that have been modified between August 24th and today. And I can drop down and change those dates and times. And so I can really hone in, show me all thoughts modified in 2011, 2012, and so forth. So there's a lot of different things that you can do with this report, including making custom reports as well. So I can set up a custom report. Show me all thoughts using a combination of all these settings, thought types, links, tags, attributes such as file attachments, and so forth, and save those and run them again in the future as this brain continues to evolve. So what this report generates today will look completely different than what it would generate a month from now, the same report. being run on a brain that's the same brain that's 1 month older. And as I mentioned earlier, this particular brain, let me go back to all thoughts. This particular brain is collaborative. I'm sharing this brain online, so let me really quickly show you that I sync this brain from time to time with the Brain cloud. And as it syncs up, it gets all of my changes onto the cloud, and any changes that are showing up on the cloud, changes I made online or from another machine and then synced, will then show up on this particular machine. And since I am sharing this as an editor with Tracy and Shelley, I can see which thoughts were modified by me and which thoughts were modified by Tracy or Shelley. So there's now ownership of different thoughts within the brain, and I can review who's been active in which areas of the brain by running that report. So that's a really special report to run as well. And then really quickly, let me just jump out to the Brain cloud.
Right, and that was going to be our final question. For those of you that I know we're going over, we were supposed to end on the hour. I do want to let you know the session will be recorded. We're going to wrap up in actually about a couple minutes, 5 minutes here, but I do want to get to some of the clouding questions. So Matt, I'm glad you're covering how to synchronize your brain to the cloud and how to make it a team brain. So we'll cover that and then close the webinar on those features.
So here I am synced up with my brain on the cloud, and they both look very similar. The brain on the right is actually the local version of this particular brain that I'm running, and my brain on the left, behind over here, this is the online version. So this is being displayed in the cloud. Right here in the cloud, I can edit thoughts and I can modify that content, add new attachments and so forth. So I can continue working on this brain on the cloud, whether that's here on my desktop, on a machine on my laptop at the airport, or even on my iPhone or iPad. I can modify this content and have it accessible when I sync again. All the changes that I made online will then be on my local version. And the changes that I just synced up today, if I go down into, let's see, Fitness Universe. So let me jump in this brain over to Fitness Universe. So there's Fitness Universe, and there's my triathlon display. So the thought that I just created this afternoon during our meeting, my presentations and documents, it's all there and accessible to me online. So I have multiple points of access for this particular brain that I've just created. And because it's collaborative, I can go to my account page, and this is where I can open up the settings for this brain. So these are all the brains that I have online. There's my JT Apparel brain. And if I go into the settings for this particular brain, this is where I can give other Team Brain users editor access to this brain. Or maybe in some cases, let's say Patrick is new to the team, I just want to give him reader access. He can get familiar with the information, but he doesn't quite have editor access yet. So I can give people specifically reader access to brains as well. Save that content, and the brain will actually send out an email. As you can see, this one email has been sent to this particular user, letting them know that I've given them a different level of access into this brain. And if you'd like to know more about Team Brain, there's a lot of information on our website at TheBrain.com, or send us a note at support@TheBrain.com, and we'd be happy to fill you in further.
All right, great. Well, I think with that, we're probably going to end our session today. In terms of calendar, there's a lot of questions about synchronization to calendars. We have a calendar in the brain. You can synchronize your calendar items outside to Gmail, and then you can also put things into Outlook. Emil was interested in what being pushed from the brain to Outlook. We don't really push to Outlook. We push to Gmail, but then you can grab things from Outlook. I don't know if you want to elaborate on that, or if that's
Sure.
Much
you can actually sync, so everything that goes into your calendar, when you click on Sync Calendar to Google Calendar, it'll take you on to access your Google Calendar. I've actually got many different Google Calendars, so it's asking me which one I want to connect to. So it'll connect to that particular calendar, and all of your brain calendar events will be pushed out into Google. From Google, you can also sync in your Outlook as well. So Google is sort of the hub that connects the two. So you can then move everything from Google into your Outlook calendar if you're an Outlook calendar person. That would be the way to set up that particular scenario. But the Brain itself is not an email tool, so it doesn't automatically send emails for those event reminders. To do that, you simply need to sync it up to a free Google Calendar, and from there you can set up whether you want Google to send you your emails or Outlook and so forth.
All right, great. And then Tatiana just wanted to see again, and a couple of people asked, how did you get to timeline view? So I did reply in the Q&A, but it's so easy just to demo. It's the clock next to the search button. So if you click on that clock there, as you can see Matt's done, that's where you can get that scrolling list of chronological items. So all good stuff. And I think with that, we're going to close today's session. I want to thank you all for the fabulous questions and for hanging in there 20 minutes past the hour. We try and get to as many questions as we can. For any question we may have missed, feel free to email us or give us a call at support@thebrain.com. You can also chat in on our website. We have live staff from 8 a.m. Pacific to 5 p.m. Pacific time. And we're also happy to do a one-on-one webinar with you. And I also want to let you know tomorrow we have the Brain 101. That's every Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern. That's a great resource where we actually start from ground up building a brain, and it's a little bit more general on the features, and it's a smaller class size, so your question, you're 100% likely to get your question demoed, whereas on these webinars, due to the volume of attendee, we try and get to probably 80% of the questions, but given the volume, I apologize in advance. I'm sure we might have missed a few of them, but that's sort of the way it goes. And then with that, you'll get the recording, you can review things, and then not next week, but the following week, we have a webinar on file management. So we did cover a lot today on dragging and dropping files. If you want to go even deeper into that, we just announced that webinar yesterday in our newsletter. You can sign up for that one on the homepage. And I guess with that, I'm going to wish you all well in your nonlinear project management. And Matt, I want to see if you have any other sage advice or words of wisdom for our attendees that are still on the call with us now.
Great. Well, I just want to thank everyone for joining us today and really emphasize, as Shelley said, the Brain 101 classes are a really, really great resource if you're just getting started. A lot of great resources on our website. That's where you can find even more templates to download, videos to watch, and video tutorials as well.
All right, great. Well, thank you all for joining us, and we hope to see you again on a future Brain Technologies event. Thanks, everyone, and have a great day.
Great. Thanks, everyone.